Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us here at Oakridge Student Ministries. My name's Jeff, and I'm the youth minister here at OPC. And this week, we're wrapping up our Real Talk series. We've spent the last 3 weeks talking about sex and relationships. And this may be something that you just wish we weren't talking about at church at all. But you know what? You can handle it. And I think it's really important that we talk about this stuff here at church, where it's safe to ask your questions and get some answers. This week, we're going to talk about something that I think is super important to remember. Today, I want us to have real talk about the choice that we all have when it comes to being in a relationship or not being in a relationship. Now, before we go on, I want you to think about the plot of a movie or a TV show that you love that has a couple in it. Take a second to think about that. What do dating and relationships look like there on that show or movie? The details are different depending on the show, but the plots are basically the same, aren't they? Two people start dating, they fall in love, then they get married, and they live happily ever after, right? It seems like being in a relationship is something that a lot of people want in their lives, and that makes it seem like that's the way things are supposed to go for a lot of us. It's almost as if there's only one path to take, and this dating and relationship thing is the only path. If you're somebody who's curious about or interested in dating, this doesn't sound all that bad. But what if you're not? What if you don't really want to be dating? Or if you're not sure what you want when it comes to relationships? Or you know that for right now, and maybe even for always, dating and relationships just aren't something you're interested in. Is it really an option to choose something else for your life? A lot of times it feels like the answer to that question is just no. It doesn't matter whether it's because of the rules or expectations put on us or just what we've seen around us. It's easy to think that when it comes to something like dating and relationships, there's really just one option. And if we don't choose that option, if we don't want to be in a relationship, either now or as we get older, well, it can feel like somehow we're missing out or we're doing it wrong. And we may start to wonder, is it okay if I never date or never get married? If we choose not to be in a relationship, will people think that something's wrong with us? Or what if somebody wants to be in a relationship with me? Is it the entire point of life to get married and have kids? Would God be disappointed in me if I don't do those things? Can God still use me for amazing things if my life doesn't include dating or relationships? If you found yourself asking questions like these, I'm really glad you're here today. Because not only is this a place where we can have real talk about stuff like this, it's also a place where we can discover what's true about it. When it comes to the pressures, expectations, and choices we have about things like dating and relationship, here's the truth. If your path in dating and relationships doesn't look the way that everyone seems to think it should, that's okay. In fact, I can guarantee you that if dating and relationships are never a major part of your life, you definitely don't have to wonder if you're missing out on big, amazing things. How do I know? Well, because of what Jesus said about this whole thing. And knowing Jesus changes everything, including the way that we see relationships. If there's anybody who wasn't afraid to talk about real things, to have real talk about anything, it was Jesus. When he was alive on earth, he made a point to tell people the truth about life, the choices they were making, and what God's best for us really looks like on the day-to-day basis. The good news is that for people who knew and followed Jesus, they wrote things down so that we could look back on it and read and know more about what Jesus said about certain circumstances even today. We're going to look at some of the things that Jesus told his closest friends and followers, and then they recorded from his time on earth. And they're things that can help us shift our thinking when it comes to not only our relationship status, but the whole point of life. One of Jesus' most famous sermons is known as the Sermon on the Mount. And that's just a fancy way of saying that Jesus delivered this particular sermon because he was on a mountain. And while the entire message is pretty cool, there's one part in particular that I think can help us understand what our focus in life should be all about. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 to 16. You're here to be light, bringing out God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up to God, this generous Father in heaven. I love the way that Jesus put this. When we're following Him, He's the one and only goal for our life. It's very simple. Our goal for life is to reflect who God is in the world around us, to be a light that shines God's love, to live so boldly and brightly that nothing can hide it. Because when we make that our focus, people can't help but notice, and that's the point. As followers of Jesus, our one and only goal is to live lives so that the light shines out of us. When we make that our focus, we know we're not missing any part of the point in life. Now, maybe it feels like I've given you two different messages here. One is, it's okay not to be in a relationship, and the other is to be a light to people around you. Maybe you're thinking, what does this have to do with that? That's a great question. See, like we said, there are so many different ideas about what the point of life is. A lot of them have to do with things like dating and relationships, and eventually maybe getting married. Sometimes other Christians may lead us to believe that if we're not interested in dating or getting married, that we'll somehow be missing out, or that something is wrong with us. But that kind of thinking just isn't true. In fact, it completely misses the point. Jesus calls us to live a life that shines and reflects God. And as people made in the image of God, we can do that all on our own. We don't need a significant other or a relationship to show God to the world around us because we already have God's image in us. Can marriage reflect the image of God? Absolutely. Can a single person reflect the image of God? Absolutely. Are you missing anything if you choose to be single? Absolutely not. Real talk. You can choose to be single. There have been incredible leaders in history that have made a huge impact on the world who were single. We have examples like Jesus, or John the Baptist, or Mother Teresa, or Paul. God can and does use single people to do incredible things. While relationships are a part of life, they're not the point of life. Sure, they can add great things to our lives, but we don't need them to live the full, meaningful, awesome life that Jesus offers us. See, if we're choosing to live a life based on what Jesus says it's all about, then we're choosing the best possible lives for ourselves. We're getting the point. You can have people ask you on dates, or people ask you to be their girlfriend or boyfriend, and you can still choose to be single. Just because somebody likes you doesn't mean that you need to be in a relationship with them. It's all about what you want, not what they want from you. No matter what you choose when it comes to dating or not dating, when you choose a life that follows Jesus, you can know that you won't miss anything that God has for you. That's why when you leave today, I want you to feel confident that you can choose to be single. And when you realize this, you recognize that dating and relationships are a part of life, but they aren't the point of life. The point of life is to reflect God's love to the world. And because of that, you have a choice. And that choosing can start right now. You can choose to date, or you can choose to be single. No matter what anyone else's opinion or expectation of you is, you can choose what's best for you without wondering if you're missing out. Real talk, you can choose to be single. So as you run towards a life that reflects the love of God to the world, here are 3 things I want you to remember. First, you can choose to be single. When we know the kind of life Jesus calls us to live, we can choose what's best for us, no matter what everyone else is doing. Secondly, you can have a better outlook if you choose to date. Maybe you aren't dating yet, but you might want to one day. And when you do, remembering that relationships are just a part of life, not the point of life, will help you to have a better perspective on dating and relationships. And then thirdly, you can celebrate what other people choose. I feel like this can be summed up with a simple, don't be a jerk. Your choice doesn't have to dictate what other people choose to do, and other people's choices don't have to dictate what you do either. So, as we close today, I want you to think about this question. What's one way you can reflect the image of God to the world around you?